11:30 today, November 28th, the Victoria County Sheriff's Office received a report of a human body at the 2500 block of Fordyce Road near Patriot Park in Victoria County.
A young woman in Texas has been missing for more than a week. Now authorities believe they have found her body. Adding to the mystery, when police tried to interview a man about it, he killed himself in front of them. Retired FBI agent Colin Schmitt joins us to talk about what this means for the investigation as we look for answers into what happened here. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We have a chilling update for you in this story of a missing young woman out in Texas, and there are still a lot of unanswered questions here. So 19-year-old Amanda Stevenson was last seen in Victoria, Texas on November 19th, and she was reported missing on November 21st. Since then, she's had a birthday, but without her friends and family because they have been part of search parties looking for her. And it turns out at 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday, November 28th, the sheriff's office received a report of a dead body. That body, authorities believe, is Amanda.
On Tuesday, we were reported the fact that the girl was missing, that Amanda was missing, at 10:30 a.m. And ever since then, we've been working tirelessly on trying to find her. We've tried social media, we've searched some property, we've used technology to try to do some cell phone information and things like that. So we've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to find the girl. And then we hear that the sheriff's department's out on where they are, and that we go out there and we help them with that crime scene, or that scene. So,
Yeah. Our investigation has resulted in a preliminary identification of the missing person, Amanda Stevenson.
I want to bring in right now former FBI agent Colin Schmitt to talk a little bit more about this. First of all, Colin, nice to meet you. Thanks so much for coming here on Sidebar. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start off first with the statement from the sheriff. So Sheriff Justin Marr has said, quote, "Our investigation has resulted in a preliminary identification of the missing person." He said that her body was found in a creek near a bridge off of a road. So let's first start there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting that whenever you use a psychic, they always say the body's by water. So in this case, generally speaking, when somebody, if they end up murdering somebody, generally they're gonna dump the body within approximately 10 to 20 meters of a road or of some sort of area that they have access to. Generally speaking, when a body is dumped, they're not going to go 40 or 50 or 100 meters into the woods because simply it's inconvenient and the body is heavy. And so in this case, they did dump. It appears the body was dumped, and now the sheriff's department has to undertake to officially identify who is the body through DNA, through dental, and through, frankly, photographs if the body is in a state that can be observed by family members.
And not to be too graphic or insensitive about this, but we've covered so many of these stories before. It would seem to me that whoever did this and dumped this body, they didn't have the means to get rid of the body otherwise, right? I mean, how many times have I seen cases before where people are trying to use dissolving agents, or they dismember the body to leave a body in what seems to be a rather open area? What does that tell you?
Panic. It tells me panic. Is this person, whoever did it, panicked? It may have been frankly a crime of passion or reaction to something that this young lady did, and then her life was taken, and then he immediately found a place to dump the body, and in a manner where he's not actually thinking to actually conceal what he did. He just wants to get away from what he actually did to this person.
And by the way, you said, and look, the sheriff said it's a preliminary identification, but you kind of listed some of the ways when the body is taken to and I believe it's taken to the Travis County Medical Examiner's office to conduct an autopsy. The first thing I think they're going to try to do is 100% identify that this is Amanda. How can they have a preliminary identification? What does that tell you?
Well, if the body is in a state where it can be observed, for example, a family member can buy and and actually go to the morgue and actually appear and look at the body, and then they can give an identification. But many times, depending on how long the body has been out in the elements, decomposition takes hold, and frankly, the body will begin to basically it goes into rigor, and then it essentially kind of melts away. And then the other issue is, frankly, the animals will start to come on to the body, and perhaps coyotes or whatever may start pulling the body apart. So not to get too graphic, but that's simply just the way it happens.
How confident are you that the medical examiner could determine the cause and manner of death, and maybe any forensic material that identifies who maybe did this?
Well, also, like the lawyer answer, it depends. It depends on how long the body was in the wild, so to speak, and what state it was in. So in the unlikely event the person who did this kept the body somewhere else for a long period of time and then dumped it, but it appears the body was intact. So based upon the very little information we have, I have 100% confidence they'll be able to have an identification of who this person is.
You think they're going to release those details immediately to the public?
No, because the number one objective or goal is to make sure family members are notified and they have time to process what's going on and what happened. Frankly, the public doesn't need to know. And in this case, it appears the person who did this may have actually killed himself, so he's no longer a threat to society.
Let's talk about that for people who are unfamiliar with this story. So before authorities made this discovery of this body, they were able to determine that Amanda may have had a connection with a man who worked for a rideshare service. And that man has been identified as 45-year-old Kevin Bennetsen. He's also of Victoria, Texas. And a little backstory here. So detectives interviewed him once. They wanted to interview him again. And it's our understanding on November 22nd, again, the day after Amanda is reported missing, officers pulled him over in a traffic stop, but he killed himself. He shot himself before they were really able to speak with him again. What do you think about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's and to all your listeners and viewers, that's indicative of guilt. The law enforcement is standing in front of him, and basically it appears that he was overcome by, number one, going to prison for the rest of his life. And I believe in Texas there is a death penalty, and having to deal with the guilt of what he did. So, like I said, you don't need to be an FBI agent for 25 years to kind of figure out what happened here.
Are you surprised? I don't know the details of this stop or how he was able to do it, but the fact that if he was around law enforcement and able to kill himself, is that surprising?
It is a little bit, because generally speaking, they would, somebody like that, he'd already been interviewed once. If he had intended to kill himself, he would have gone and done it already. I think he was just overwhelmed by the fact that he was probably thought this was the time he was going to get arrested, because it was a traffic stop versus the other time. I think they may have found him at his home, and he probably knew being in a traffic stop, he was probably going to be arrested.
Let's expand upon that a little bit more. So Amanda's family reportedly believes that she was with Bennetsen when she vanished. The reporting indicates that this man had worked as a teacher. He lists himself as the owner of, quote, Bennetsen Organic Farms on his LinkedIn page. It appears he runs at a rural property he owns. And police say that they searched that property with dozens of officers, dogs, drones. It doesn't seem that they found anything. And his wife is now cooperating with police. So it seems to me that when they first interviewed him, they might not have had enough to arrest him. He might have been a suspect or a person of interest, but not enough to arrest, right?
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have the probable cause to arrest him. And frankly, for something like this, you don't want to go in and, for lack of a better term, over arrest, because the worst thing to do is actually have to release him after you have arrested him. So they want to get their ducks in a row, and they want to do it the right way. And frankly, it appears that they did classic police work, and they followed all the steps. But it's just that it was a tragic outcome for both families, so to speak. And it's just horrible what happened here.
Again, we don't really understand what connection. I don't believe there's been any prior connection between the two. But his wife is now cooperating with police. What can we expect?
Well, she's going to be able to give a background on him. It's unlikely she's going to have much information about what occurred if he did in fact kill this person. The best place to find the evidence is frankly the body, the fingernails, the DNA. The DNA just simply does not lie. And then the second place to find evidence would be on him to see if there's any trace evidence of her on him, i.e., hair or DNA, and then of course his car. His car is the likely place where this occurred because, frankly, he's a rideshare driver. They had no previous connection, and in any murder or any homicide investigation, you look for that original or genesis connection, and then that's generally where you go from there, and that's where you find all your evidence.
Talking about the evidence, examination of the bodies, his car, how long would that generally take before they start to realize what happened?
Well, the body is going to be examined first when they found it. They take all the photographs to see if there's anything obvious. Believe it or not, some people leave driver's licenses or identification documents around a dead body. And then the forensic medical examiner is going to be the person who's really going to be doing the investigation there. And they're going to be combing through to find any trace evidence. And then once they find the DNA most likely under the fingernails, then that gets sent out to a lab. And that could be anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks to get the results back. And it's not slowed down by bureaucracy. It's slowed down by simply physics or biology, because there's a process to identify DNA. And then the car, once again, after he killed himself, that's when I'm sure they seized the car, got a warrant for the car. Then they went in, and then they had their evidence people or their crime scene technologists or whatever they call them down there to go through and search that car. But once again, they're searching it, but they're not making a determination of what happened. They're getting the evidence so it can be forensically tested, i.e. fingerprints, DNA, hair, anything that can connect the two together.
Talking about a crucial piece of evidence, remarkably, her phone was found. Now, it was locked, so they have to work to unlock it, see who she's been communicating with. That feels like that could be a really big turning point in the case. I imagine not just what her communications say, but could they track the location of the phone as well?
Absolutely. Cell phone forensics, I did that for many, many years. And that was the magic ingredient to the sauce. Basically, they're going to be able to take that phone, get access to it. Hopefully, if it's facial, she'll be able to access it, or maybe have some sort of passcode. Unfortunately, most people use their date of birth or whatever to get access to the phone. Once they're in there, they'll use a tool to actually extract everything in that phone. And most important thing they're going to get out of that is the GPS coordinates, because that phone is pinging off of cell sites wherever it's at. So that's going to be another connector to this guy or this rideshare. And literally, you're going to be able to follow the phone through when she was with this guy and when she expired, quite frankly. And then the last part of that will be the rideshare information. The rideshare companies keep extremely detailed information about their drivers. And there might even be a possibility that there's video inside that car.
Right. And look, I think there's a part of it where you said before panic, why the body was disposed the way that it was. The fact the phone hasn't been destroyed or was discarded in some way. I think you're onto something there, that this could have been a kind of a rush or a panic. I do want to ask you, I want to wrap up the conversation with talking about the public's help. So there's so many details we don't know. And right now, law enforcement is asking anybody with information about Amanda's death to call Victoria Crime Stoppers at 361-572-4200. How do they weave through the phone calls with potential tips? Because this is now becoming a very high-profile case, and you have to weed out the actual legitimate leads versus those who maybe are not, or those that are maybe not. How do they go around doing that?
Yeah, that I've worked a few kidnappings, and that ends up being part of the nightmare of the job, because you're going to be overwhelmed by leads. Perhaps not in this case, because the body was found, and so people are going to take a step back. The ultimate objective of this continued investigation is to find out if he had any help and to rule out anybody else doing this, because frankly, they want to make sure everybody comes to justice.
Colin Schmitt, thank you so much for giving your perspective on this. I'm very curious to see what the results are. in, like you said, maybe 2 to 6 weeks, could be a bit longer before the public finds out what's happening. But appreciate it. Really sad case, and hopefully we'll get some answers. Colin Schmitt, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, everybody, that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.